Now that you guys have made a little bit of progress on your figure sculpture, I'm gonna be talking next about the thigh here. Okay, so once I finished my lower leg, I did go back in with some loose plaster and make it really smooth. And it's super easy to do, and it also makes it a lot stronger. So if you have your cup of water, and this is just loose plaster here, you can dip your finger in the water, dip your finger in the plaster, and let's say, for example, I want to smooth right there. I'm gonna kind of build that up, and then I'll just take a tiny bit more water on my finger and kind of smooth that out. So you can think about the loose plaster as kind of the skin of your sculpture, and you can continue to build it up to make it as smooth as possible. In the end, in the very long haul, after this is sculpted, you can use sandpaper to even make it smoother, but there must be a layer of the loose plaster on there to actually be able to sand it. Okay, so a couple tips. Keep your water and your plaster separated so that you don't ruin your plaster strips, because once you dip this in here, it has to be used or else it will not be good within 5 minutes. If I were to dip this in here and go over top of my other pieces of plaster, then I've ruined my other pieces. So this is about the size plaster strip that you need. I also have cut some smaller pieces to fill in little spaces and gaps. So once I have made the knee, which is just like an oval that you can see, then I'm gonna start thinking about the thigh. So on this area, I did already think about the thigh. This is about 3 to 4 layers of the plaster strips wrapped around my already one layer. It depends on how tight your first layer was. Sorry about that. And how much you need to wrap it up to build it up a little bit. Okay, so if your wrapping wasn't like as tight as mine, you might only be doing you know, a couple layers where you just kind of go around like this. And I want to remind you guys, make sure all those little holes that you see in the plaster are covered up. So just use your finger to kind of smooth those out really well. It'll make it so much stronger. Okay, so build that up a bit just by wrapping the loose plaster, or I'm sorry, the plaster strips. And then once you get, you know, I don't know, about the same thickness as your lower leg, then you can start looking at that packet or your own body to kind of judge the shapes or sculpt the shapes of the thigh muscles. Okay, if I continue to wrap this just how it is and just keep going around, it's going to start looking like a sausage person. Okay, so the majority of the thigh is actually in the front, so the major muscles are more in the front, whereas with the calf, they are in the back. So looking at this packet, so I have, you know, this page and this page. I really like to look at this one, and especially this picture right here. Again, these are exaggerated, but look at this major muscle that starts from your hip to the middle, and it's just very large. So this takes some build up to do. You also have some side muscle pieces that you'll be adding in. The two that are in the back, the two thigh muscles back here that attach to the butt area, those are big, but they're kind of stretched longer. So they're not gonna bulk out as much. Okay, so I would use my bigger strips to start with this. I'm just gonna dip it in the water. And what I'm going to be making, I can look at this exact shape, is kind of this thicker here, and then it tapers off the bottom and the top. So, and you know, you have to also think about the position of the body. So my back of my thigh would be more like here, and the front of my thigh would be here. So I'm going to start just by like putting on some chunkier pieces on this front portion. And I guess I'll maybe build up too. So it's fatter right in that center point, and it's gonna start tapering off towards the lower leg here and tapering off towards the top. As I'm doing this, I'm kind of blending the plaster into the plaster that's already there. So I'm gonna dip another one. I'm gonna add one right here. It's a little bit smaller, and I'm gonna turn it horizontally. Again, like, you can sculpt this any way in terms of the muscle shapes, because it depends on how large your the buildup that you first did. It also depends on how large your pieces are that you start with. But you do want to now structure the muscles by like molding them and not just simply wrapping. So what I could do from here, it's already wet. I could simply dip my hand in the loose plaster or finger and add that onto the surface. If I really want to get that stuck on there, let's say it's kind of sliding around on you, you can do this with really light pressure. Again, not only is it gonna make it stronger, but in the long haul, it'll make it look really nice too. Okay, so I've kind of built that up right here. There's a weird space between the knee and this like lower part of the thigh. So I'm gonna fill this in a bit. And I don't want it to be too meaty, but I do want it to kind of gradually get thicker as it goes up to this middle portion. And I am gonna have to add to the back, but not quite as much. So for right now, I'm gonna kind of go with where I'm at right here. I'm gonna work on the sides of my thigh. So if I look at the picture, I can see the two long major muscle groups here and here. So I'm just gonna get this piece, kind of roll it into maybe a tube kind of shape, and get that stretching. One thing I wanna point out too, because as we get closer to up here, you're gonna start having to sculpt a major muscle group, the butt area. But this is the hip. So think where your hips are, the butt is actually going to be lower. So my butt is going to actually come down to here. And we'll talk about that in the next video in terms of how to sculpt it. Okay, so I'm getting some meatiness and thickness. I'm not going to go into much more detail about this because it's simply just like building it up with some of the shapes that I just went over. So some longer tubes, starting in the front because that's the bulkier part of the muscle, and you know, gradually getting thicker as it goes up to here, or taller. As you can see, that's kind of how I did this. The back of the knee will have a very thin piece. So this calf to the knee area doesn't look quite as strange, like it dips in there. So I'd probably fill in a little spot so it gradually starts to get thicker again. For the back part of the thigh, if we look at that picture again, and I'll just point it out one more time. Right here, the two bulkier parts of the muscle are towards the buttocks, and they start to taper off as they get lower towards, you know, the calf. So it might take me a couple times to kind of build up that shape to get that muscle big enough that it actually looks proportional. I can't tell you how helpful that packet is going to be while you're working. See, this piece got wet and it's hard, so now I can no longer use it because I can't mold with it. And then I'm just gonna place that there. I'm kind of pinching some of the water out as I'm building. You can kind of see that because that can make it a bit annoying. Since that's still a little bit wet and I want it to be smoother a little bit, or just really be a strong, sturdy hold, I'm gonna put just a little bit of loose plaster on there. The loose plaster is over on the other side of the room in a bag, and you can help yourself. Just make sure your cup is clean and dry. So whatever cup you use, clean it out really well, and you know, just add the plaster, like dry it out, and then add the plaster to it. So that's all I'm gonna go for right now. I definitely have to build this up more, but I'm not gonna have you guys watch that because it's simply just sculpting more of the same shapes and layering them on top of each other and gradually making this kind of wider here as it goes towards the butt area. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.